How old's that?
Well, this one itself is, I'd say, 16th, 17th. So imagine, clap was rife.
That's STDs in modern parlance. Sorry about Steve, he's a rough man with rough ways and rough words.
Hence clap. How did you get rid of clap in the old days, in the 16th century, 17th century? Yeah?
I don't know, how did they do it?
Mercury down the old doogie howser.
No.
Yeah, inserted with one of these. You'll find many archaeologists don't like touching these because they know what it's been used for.
But you can't get that down your old.
No. It would have had a spike on the end of it. No needle like today. So you just had a thin nozzle.
Yeah.
And of course
that went straight down the old chap.
Yeah, or the boil on the back of the neck to draw out the pus. Yeah, just would have been stuck in.
You're a rough man with rough ways, but I like your knowledge.
Now imagine this should have really been on the other side. This is Sin City on the other side, on the south side.
Well, it's actors at the Globe Theatre.
Yeah, so all the brothels were over there.
Yeah,
so you know, maybe this has come over from there. But another great thing about this is there's a saying with this.
Yeah.
You'd have half an hour with Venus, and 3 months with Mercury. Half an hour with Venus, was with a lady of the night, as in a poem.
Yeah.
And the 3 months with Mercury, was of course, as I said, Mercury.
I thought you were going to rhyme Venus there very cleverly. Half an hour with Venus, Mercury down there. So there we go. I've just found something there which 400 years ago could have either extracted pus from a boil or gone straight down your old chap there. And with a bit of mercury, this is a pewter syringe.
This is your first find.
Yeah.
And quite an important find.
So there we go, it's a good find from you. And that is going in my bucket, mate.
Good find.
Right, it's a good find. Cannon, look. Just ignore it. Keg of beer, a half keg.
Stella.
It's very old Stella, so, you know, going back to the 14th century or 13th century, isn't it? Whatever it is.
All finds in the UK, be they from the foreshore or anywhere else, can be registered with the Portable Antiquities Scheme, a bunch of experts that keep an eye on what's turned up round the country. Luckily, we've got our own Portable Antiquities advisor, the hirsute hero of mud, Jeff Egan. Dr. Jeff also works for the British Museum and likes a pint, making him triply qualified to meet at the not-so-secret Mudmen HQ for a chat about our finds.
So here you go, Jeff. This is our Cannon Street booty. Give us the overview then. What do you think?
Well, tremendous range here again, but this time it's a real focus on the 17th century, I would say. Some 16th century items. We go up into the 19th century, but we got some really quite early Tudor and Stuart things and some very interesting things among those.
And what's really good is, this is the average man in the street. This is not the kings and queens. This is, this is us.
Yeah.
And that's what's really good about it, the whole of it. Yeah.
And you know, the power of place. It's brilliant.
And of course, we have a section down there near Cannon Street in a secret location where, of course, we have garnets up, semi-precious stones. So it's actually... Ooh!
What's the taste?
Dusty and dirty. But it's to show you the colour. The colour is... if we go to that light there, it's a lovely colour. And of course, when this glints down there, when the sun comes out and this glints, and of course it's clean and mud-free, it looks great down there, but nobody knows why they're down there. Any ideas?
No, they're a big puzzle. They're not gem quality, they're poorer than that. You can see the crystalline structure, so they're individual crystals, which mean they're limited where they can come from.
On a good tide, when all that mud's cleared off and the light's shining on it, these things just glint everywhere. There are thousands of these down there.
I did try getting the British Museum to look at some of these to try and tie them down. There's a big project going on about garnets at the moment, and they're so poor quality that they haven't come across anything quite like them, I'm afraid.
Okay.
So we don't
That's
know.
quite good, though. They're such low quality. They're actually impressed.
Yeah. And well, here are my favourite. This is what I'm really particularly interested in.
Jeff, you've been itching to get into these.
Absolutely.
These are, of course...
These are lead seals put on cloths.
Yeah.
And these are the hallmarks that say the cloth is all right. And it happens that the area we've been searching, where these were found, there's half a dozen here, from the 16th and 17th century, is the centre of the dyers area of London. So where cloths from all over England were brought, white, undyed, and using the river water, they were dyeing them with various colours, mainly woad, but a wide variety of colours, mixtures, and you got beautiful names like puke was a colour.
Was it called puke?
Goose turd green, which is very evocative.
Oh,
you can imagine exactly what
puke.
goose turd green was.
So what have we got? We've got puke and goose turd green. And these were colours?
They were colours.
I'd like some cloth, please, Jeff.
Goose turd green for you, sir.
That'll do nicely. And have you got any of the puke in stock? I'll have a roll of that.
There's been a run on puke, I'm afraid.
There's been a run on puke.
Absolutely. Well, I think almost the latest things on the table here are these medicine bottles of glass. And the two here are very, very bright colours indeed, and there's a warning there, and I think they actually say not to be taken. Yes, not to be taken down the side. And there's a little bit of tactile labelling going on here. There's a sort of grid on top there, and I think that may even have been for people whose eyesight wasn't good enough. They knew to be wary of what was in this. This one, well, it could be...
Poison.
Well, absolutely. Blue is the big giveaway for poison. That is the signal.
So this blue bottle, I shouted poison humorously, but actually was.
Yeah, bullseye.
So what have been hidden here? The cyanide?
I don't know, but it's famously given to children who were too noisy babies to shut them up.
Yeah.
And
It'll do that all right.
Guess what? They did fall asleep.
Yes, I bet they did. I bet they had some strange dreams.
Yes, and they wanted more, of course. Right, now, this thing is very intriguing. It's actually a syringe, a medicinal syringe, again of pewter.
I found this actually, and I didn't know what it was. It was actually stuck fast there, and I looked at it, and actually at first, because it was squeezed out there, I thought it was a tube of paint. And then Steve told me the grisly truth about this. I was glad it didn't have the needle which went down the old chap there.
And they're actually very difficult to date, because once they got the design right, which seemed to happen in the early 16th century, it didn't change right up until the 18th century. But my guess from where this was found is it's likely to be 17th. Right, well, so we've got virtually everything you can think of here, or we've touched base on so many things, industrial, domestic, but I think you can focus on the medicines here, the syringe and those bottles. Still a lot to be found out.
So that means you're going to get injected down the Doogie Howser.
No, because it'd have to be quite a phenomenal Doogie Howser.
No, we can get a smaller one in, a much smaller one in.
With our minds firmly set on all things medicinal, it's time to go our separate ways to learn more. Brooksy is off to the Hunterian Museum to learn about the development of modern medicine, while I investigate the ghoulish practice of body snatching.
We found loads of medical bits on the foreshore, and I'm not one for needles, but this item pricked my imagination. I've come to the Royal College of Surgeons Hunterian Museum, named after surgical pioneer Dr. John Hunter. Curator Sam Alberti is going to apply some salve to my curiosity. Johnny and I are on the foreshore down by the Millennium Bridge, and behind a revetment we find this. Now I know it's a pewter syringe. Can you tell us any more about it, Sam?
Well, this is really interesting. It's probably around the 18th century, but it's difficult to say what it was for, because syringes had a variety of uses. So it could have been for syringing out your ears, it could have been for other orifices, it could have been a small enema syringe.
For years and years, most mudlarks have always thought that, of course, for syphilis, that this would have been used to inject mercury down the, how can I say this, down the old Doogie Howser.
I think it unlikely, I'm afraid. Yeah, more likely to have been an ear syringe. Less glamorous, more likely.
Well, that has well and truly shattered my theory on mercury, hasn't it?
From the collection here, this is a syringe from the 20th century. This is the sort of thing we understand today to be a hypodermic syringe. And as you can see, it's a very different object there, kind of mass-produced glass and nickel as opposed to your wonderful find here.
From syringes to bone saws, medical equipment was pretty rudimentary in the 18th century. People were prepared to put up with a lot of discomfort in the search for a cure. There was very little scientific basis for most of their medicine.
Well, the 1700s, there's still a lot of hocus pocus going on. There still is today. A lot of surgeons in the 18th century would do a lot of amputation and so on. The bloodletting was a very common treatment for all sorts of things that were wrong. And so this instrument here is a scarificator. I don't know if you can see, but it has 12 very fine blades that would come out. So you'd put this over the part of the body, release the blades to create these very fine wounds, and then heat up this cup and put it over the area, which would suck the blood out. And people would bleed maybe a pint of blood, which would actually usually make them much worse.
So all this is going on at the same time as my syringe is being used?
Yes, absolutely. What's important about the 1700s is that you're training more people formally to be doctors and physicians, and surgeons are starting to use anatomy. They're starting to use the anatomical knowledge from the Renaissance, and they're starting to use that in training. So you're getting a lot more formal training by John Hunter and Percival Pott and William Cheselden, and they're training their successors. It's not until the 1800s that these great advances come along, and that's when you start getting the big teaching hospitals and the great advances in surgery. The so-called age of heroic surgery is in the late 1800s, and that's when you start getting fewer people dying from operations.
So who was John Hunter and what advances did he make?
Well, John Hunter goes off to war and comes back with a detailed knowledge of gunshot wounds and trauma wounds and how to treat them. He then becomes one of the greatest anatomists of his age, looking at animals and natural history, looking at the development of teeth. He understands a great deal about the circulation of the blood and wounds. And so Hunter's great achievement was to put surgery on a scientific basis.
So what do we actually owe these anatomists, you know, the guys that charted how our bodies work?
Well, we owe them everything. We owe them how our healthcare knowledge functions today. And it's from these humble instruments, like the one you found, that we have the instruments that we know and we can use today to make surgery safer.
Coming up, I get the lowdown on the cadaverous practice of grave robbing.
When do we get this kind of appetite for cadavers?
In the early 1750s, you need more bodies.